I'm Josh Klein.
And I'm Elise Hugh.
We host a podcast from Accenture called Built for Change.
Every part of every business is being reinvented right now. That means companies are facing brand new pressures to use fast evolving technologies and address shifting consumer expectations.
But with big changes come even bigger opportunities. We've talked with leaders from every corner of the business world to learn how they're harnessing change to totally reinvent their companies.
And how you can do it too.
Subscribe to Built for Change now so you don't miss an episode.
Portland-based NuScale Power has been leading the way for a new generation of nuclear power plants. They're called small modular nuclear reactors. Last week, though, the company was in the headlines because it called off plans to build those reactors in Idaho. But what exactly does NuScale intend to do, and why was this news such a big deal? Today on CityCast Portland, we're listening back to a conversation I had earlier this year with Reuters energy and environment correspondent Tim Gardner about NuScale's push for a nuclear future. It's Monday, November 13th. I'm John Notarianni, in for Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Tim, thanks for being here.
John, thank you.
So this Portland company, NuScale, it's one of the leading companies in the world that's developing what are called small modular nuclear reactors. They're SMRs is the acronym that we're probably going to be saying a lot in this conversation. Why are we even thinking about going back to nuclear power as a country? Like, isn't that kind of out of style?
Yeah, well, here in Washington, D.C., it is very much in style, both amongst Republicans who like it because a lot of power plants are in their districts, and Democrats are embracing it for the potential it has to one day reduce emissions. The Biden administration also wants to make sure that the existing fleet of reactors is going to be not closing down, which many have been in the last decade.
Yeah. And what even is a small modular reactor? That's what this company, NuScale, is proposing. How's that different than a normal power plant?
Well, that's a great question because the sort of prototype that NuScale wants to build by 2029 is not all that small. It's the individual reactors would be small. They're about 77 megawatts, and the plant they want to build, this experimental plant at the U.S. National Lab in Idaho, would be 6 of these reactors together. So that's about enough for about 400,000 typical homes.
All right, so we're doing a cluster, basically like a 6-pack of these small reactors as opposed to one giant power plant. What's the benefit of a smaller reactor? Like, why are we interested in designing technology to make a little one as opposed to a big old one?
So there are a couple of reasons. They're called modular. The M means that they could be built in factories. So instead of concentrating all this work in some city where they're building a giant reactor, the parts could be made in a factory. And backers say that will eventually put the costs down because the factory knows all the parts to build, kind of like a Lego, and they'll just ship them off to the next town that wants to build one. The designers have also called these plants passively safe.
Okay, that's not an encouraging term. Go on.
So what they mean is, if there were to be an incident, let's say an attack on the plant, that people could walk away from the plant for 72 hours. It would not need any electricity, and it would not need an outside source of water. And one of the worries that happens when the nuclear plants get in trouble is that they don't have a water supply and the cooling can't continue, and then you have a meltdown. So these new reactors, passively safe, backers say, they wouldn't need the power and they wouldn't need the water for 72 hours or so.
So basically, it's not really new nuclear technology from what we had in the 1950s. It's more like they're potentially going to be cheaper to build and operate and potentially less prone to like catastrophic failure. Is that right?
That's what they are being marketed as. The prototype plant in Idaho will answer a lot of questions.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the company NuScale, the company that is going to be building that basically trial reactor in Idaho. Tell me a little bit more about this company, NuScale, and how they got started here in Portland. I'm sort of surprised to know that we are housing one of the leading nuclear companies in the country right now.
Well, it's a company that's been around since around 2007. It got a bunch of money in 2018 from the Department of Energy. And NuScale, though it is based in Portland, it has a couple different offices throughout the country. And it has become, in recent years, one of the first publicly traded SMR companies.
That's the small modular reactor we were talking about earlier.
Yes. But it also has ownership by a sort of giant engineering company called Fluor. So it's rapidly becoming a larger company with, that's publicly traded, and it has a lot of corporate ownership beyond it.
Yeah, and they did recently get approval from the government for their design of these reactors. They're working on, as we mentioned, a test reactor, basically, in Idaho. But what's their longer plan? Like, where are they eventually hoping that these reactors are going to be used?
Well, they want to keep building.
Yeah.
They are in talks with many countries. They've been in talks with Ukraine since before the February 2022 invasion by Russia.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just a few weeks ago, Philippines ministers were at the White House, and they met with NuScale officials as well. So Asia, Eastern Europe.
And I also saw South Korea. They're talking with South Korea, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And NuScale's not alone. Just this month, Westinghouse, also sort of a storied nuclear energy company that did a lot of the early work in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. They announced their first small modular reactor.
NuScale really is looking and having meaningful conversations with nations across the globe to put these smaller nuclear power plants online at some point in the future. Could we expect to see this sort of SMR power here in the Pacific Northwest too?
So, like I said, there's dozens of these companies, and they would like to move to more remote locations to get the benefits of what they call, virtually emissions-free power. The West Coast is definitely a place that they're looking, and they're looking as many places as possible. So one of the things about going small is that the smaller plants wouldn't need to have as big a radius around them as the big plants. It's sort of a safety zone. The people who want to sell these say that's one advantage, that they could fit in smaller communities.
I got to say, though, there's a smaller radius of safety around them, which and you're saying that part of the appeal is that they aren't necessarily going to have the same sort of like cascading catastrophic effects if something were to go wrong. We are still talking about creating nuclear waste here, though, and nuclear waste is nasty stuff. Should we be concerned about the safety of this?
That's definitely one of the bigger critiques that opponents have. The NuScale reactor uses uranium just like a regular reactor would, and it would create waste as well. NuScale says it would be contained, that first you have to keep nuclear waste, which nuclear companies call spent fuel, that you
love the euphemism. Yeah.
You'd have to keep it in a pool of water for a number of years, and then sort of in casks right at the site. So you would have nuclear waste at the site, which is radioactive and toxic for hundreds of thousands of years. And there is, I think what you're alluding to is that there is no permanent place for this to be stored. Going back decades, the United States has wanted to put it at Yucca Mountain in Nevada, not too far from the casino strip. But funny thing was, the politicians in Nevada said, hey, we don't want that here. And the casino moguls didn't want trucks or trains going by with equipment and radioactive waste. So that's
casino moguls and environmentalists, strange bedfellows.
Right. but there is no place yet.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about the risks that developing nuclear power might hold for us. But first, let's take a quick break.
I'm Josh Klein.
And I'm Elise Hugh.
We host a podcast from Accenture called Built for Change.
Every part of every business is being reinvented right now. That means companies are facing brand new pressures to use fast evolving technologies and address shifting consumer expectations.
But with big changes come even bigger opportunities. We've talked with leaders from every corner of the business world to learn how they're harnessing change to totally reinvent their companies.
And how you can do it too.
Subscribe to Built for Change now so you don't miss an episode.
What other risks are people concerned about with nuclear power right now?
So some of the designs for small modular reactors, or what the industry calls advanced reactors, would use a different kind of uranium that's much higher enriched than what's used in conventional plants or what NuScale is looking to use. And, people who are concerned about proliferation are not happy about this development.
Oh my gosh. So you're saying that theoretically, when more of these nuclear reactors come online, they could be making this hyper enriched uranium that could be used for weapons, and that, if it falls into the wrong hands, that could be really apocalyptic.
Well, yeah, some of the materials associated with that. That's not NuScale's plan, but some of the designs that are being talked about would be using this higher enriched uranium and reprocess it.
Yeah. And, even with what NuScale is producing, I think about nuclear waste, which exists for hundreds of thousands of years. And, there's so many different places across the world, whether it's somewhere like the Pacific Northwest, where we could have a major earthquake at any given moment and that waste could spill into the Columbia River, or places like Ukraine, which we saw that during the most recent war, Russian forces occupied a nuclear power plant. It just seems like creating more nuclear power across the world just creates at least the threat of a lot more risk, right?
It is quite ironic that Ukraine and countries in Eastern Europe are talking about boosting nuclear energy after what we've just seen.
And NuScale hopes to have their first test plant open 2029, right?
That's right.
The thing that I'm curious about is I feel like, at least in terms of the argument, so much of this is about climate change and about, trying to get away from, trying to get to zero carbon emissions in the country and in the world, which is something we absolutely need to do. And nuclear power is being sort of billed as a green energy. But how much of a difference do you think a return to nuclear power is actually going to make in terms of the climate crisis? Could this be something that is actually making a big difference in our net emissions across the country and across the world?
John, it's a great question. It's very hard to say. As we've talked about, it takes an awful long time to build these new projects. You have dozens of companies, only one approval so far. And there's people at Stanford University who say, look, solar and wind are getting cheaper by the day, by the week. And let's go full in on those, back them up with batteries. Nuclear is wasting our time and money. And we should just go into vast wind and solar farms and geothermal and batteries, and we can do it that way. But nuclear advocates point to how their plants are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're continually putting out power. And nuclear can be used in a whole bunch of industries that are really hard to cut emissions from, but it's got a ways to go.
Tim, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Well, that's all for us today here on CityCast Portland. But if you like the show, tell a friend about it or leave us a rating or a review. We'd really appreciate it. I'm John Notarianni, in for Claudia Meza. We'll be back tomorrow with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.